Imagine being 17 and living in a house that smells like mothballs and old yeast. That is my life. I am Elle, and while most girls my age are out dancing to the latest beats, I am usually stuck in a kitchen in Wisconsin, pretending it is 1954. My mom, Mrs. Faye, is a total vintage holic. She has this huge following on YouTube where she shows off her perfect retro life. To her fans, she is an inspiration. She is the person making my life a total living hell. One afternoon, I was sitting at our wooden kitchen table, and my arms were literally shaking. My mom stood there in her floral apron, flashing a bright fake smile at her camera. She started her video by shouting, "Hey Beans," and telling her subscribers how cranked she was to introduce her special guest mate. I just sat there, struggling with this heavy, old-fashioned butter churn. It felt like my muscles were about to snap. I looked at the lens and drawled a very unenthusiastic hello. I told the viewers we were making butter from scratch and tried to act excited, but I sounded like a robot. My mom stopped the recording and looked so frustrated. She asked me to do it properly this time. I felt my face get hot with anger. I snapped at her and reminded her that this was the 6th take already. I told her I couldn't even feel my arms anymore. I was done being a prop in her show. I told her that if she still wasn't satisfied, she should just film the whole thing herself. Then I stood up and stormed off, leaving her alone with her butter and her camera. As I walked through the living room, I looked around at the velvet sofas and the rotary phones. It is a total vintage-holic paradise. There is even a golden YouTube play button hanging on the wall, which reminds me every day that our life is a public performance. Living like this is such a hassle. I am a hip-hop dancer at heart, and I love modern clothes and loud music. But because this 1950s lifestyle puts food on our table, I have to put up with it. The worst part is when we go out. She makes me wear these cheesy, itchy vintage dresses so that I do not ruin her aesthetic in public. For a dancer who lives in hoodies and sneakers, it is pure torture. Later that day, we ended up at a local thrift shop. For a moment, I managed to sneak away and slip into some hip-hop clothes I found on a rack. Looking at myself in the mirror, I felt like the real me again. I looked so much better in those baggy threads. But of course, my mom walked over and ruined it. She looked at my outfit with a face full of disgust and asked what on earth those awful clothes were. She handed me a stiff, floral vintage dress. She told me to try it on, claiming it was the bee's knee. I changed into the dress, but I felt ridiculous. The bee's knees? More like something a granny. I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. Just then, my cousin Daisy chimed in. She is also my schoolmate, but she is basically a mini version of my mom. She started gushing about how pretty I looked and told my mom she had excellent taste. I stood there feeling frustrated, watching the two of them pick out even more tacky clothes. In my head, I was screaming at Daisy that if she liked the dress so much, she should just take it herself. We finally walked to the counter to pay. My mom started rummaging through her handbag, and her face went pale. She looked panicked and said she must have misplaced her wallet, so we would have to come back another time. I hid a smile. I actually had her bank card in my hand behind my back. I raised my eyebrows mischievously, thinking I had finally won. But then the cashier ruined everything. She smiled warmly at my mom and said it was no problem because she was a regular customer. She told my mom she could just pay the next time. My jaw dropped. I was so confused and annoyed. I just wanted to go home, but instead I was stuck with that hideous dress. Cut to an hour later, and I was sitting in our old 1950s Chevy. Mom was dragging me to some boring vintage event because, in her words, the more the merrier. As she drove, she talked to Blue Streak about how I needed to behave myself at this big party. I got so tired of her voice that I just stared out the window, watching the trees go by. Suddenly, the car made a terrible noise and started shaking. Smoke began pouring out from under the hood. We both got out to see the damage. I could not help but be sarcastic. I told her how fantastic the situation was, especially since we did not even have our phones to call for help. My mom just sighed and lectured me again. She said it would be ridiculous to carry smartphones while wearing vintage clothes. She told me people lived fine without them back then, and that I should stop relying on technology. Then, she had the nerve to say that some nobleman would surely come to our rescue. I was so fed up that I told her to stay there and wait all she wanted. But I was going to find a garage. I only took a few steps before a fancy car actually pulled over. An old man in a sharp suit stepped out. He was very polite and offered to help us. It turns out he was a huge fan of my mom's YouTube channel. He even asked to take a picture with her. My mom was over the moon. She thanked him for saving her chariot and called him the Ginchi. I just stood there rolling my eyes again. I really wish she would stop using those weird old-timey slangs. Eventually, we reached the event, which was held in a massive, fancy building. My mom did not waste a second. She immediately ran off to find her fellow social media celebrities and started posing for photos. Cameras were flashing everywhere as reporters took pictures of them. She completely left me behind, feeling lost and confused in the middle of all the noise. As I was trying to push my way through the madness, I overheard two women whispering to each other. One of them pointed at my mom and asked if that was Faye. She told her friend that my mom was way too extra and that she could not even get through the first minute of her videos. But my mom really believed the whole world was her fan. But here were people mocking her. I honestly did not understand why she wanted to be here with all these fake people so bad. I could not stand that stuffy room for another minute. So I slipped outside to get some fresh air. The cool evening breeze felt good against my skin. As I wandered down the street, I heard a beat that made my heart jump. I spotted a group of teenagers nearby, and they were dancing to old-school hip-hop. This was exactly what I loved. I wanted to join them so badly, but then I looked down at my heavy floral dress and hesitated. I hated that stupid dress so much. But then my favorite jam started playing. I let the adrenaline take over and forgot about the itchy fabric. I jumped into the crowd and started moving. Everyone seemed really impressed, and they even moved back to make room for me to shine. That was when I noticed a guy named Roy. He was one of the dancers, and he was amazing. He stepped forward and joined me, and for a few minutes, we were perfectly in sync. I was really feeling the music and finally feeling like myself when a familiar screeching voice pierced through the air. It was my mom. She screamed my name so loudly that it startled me. I lost my balance, tripped over my long skirt, and heard a loud rip. My mom marched over, looking horrified. She demanded to know what I was doing and told me to agitate the gravel immediately, which is just her weird way of saying leave right now. She grabbed my arm and dragged me all the way back to the car. The ride home was silent and miserable. Once we finally made it home, the fight exploded the second we walked into the living room. My mom was pacing back and forth, looking absolutely livid. She shouted that if anyone had seen me dancing like that, her perfect image one she spent years building would be completely ruined. I just scoffed at her. I told her that if she was so worried about her image, she should just stop dragging me into these things and do them alone. She snapped back, telling me to mind my manners, and that I should find a practical hobby instead of dancing like those good-for-nothing lazy bums. Hearing her call dancers like that was the final straw. I was absolutely furious, so I turned around and stormed into my room, slamming the door behind me. I stayed there all night, fuming in the dark. The next morning, I woke up with my stomach growling. I was starving. I waited until I was sure the coast was clear before creeping downstairs to find something to eat. When I opened the fridge, a wave of stench hit me. It smelled like rotten eggs and decay. Honestly, this thing must have been from the time of Napoleon or something. I desperately wanted some instant soup, so I shoved it into the microwave. But of course, the thing would not even heat up. I remembered my mom bragging about spending over $500 on that stupid appliance just because it had a vintage look. It was completely useless. I needed a distraction to blow off some steam, so I tried to turn on the TV, hoping to zone out with a movie. But that ancient piece of junk would not turn on either. It was completely dead. I stood there staring at the screen, feeling like I was losing my mind. Is there anything in this rusty dollhouse that actually worked? I knew then that I had to get out of this place before I went totally insane. I stepped outside to escape the stuffy air of my house, and that is when I saw a moving truck next door. A new family was moving in. I looked closer. It was the same guy I had been dancing with the night before. He spotted me, smiled, and waved. I was still feeling pretty down after the fight with my mom, so I could only manage a forced smile and a small nod. Royce walked right over to me. He asked why I had such a long face and told me that if I was bored, I should come give him a hand with the boxes. Before I could even say a word, he practically dragged me over to his yard. After we finished moving the heavy stuff, we sat down to rest on the front porch. He handed me a cold canned juice, which felt amazing against my skin. It turns out Royce had just moved here with his dad and was already enrolled at my school. I have to admit, he is quite the charmer. Within just a few minutes, I felt comfortable enough to tell him all about my weird life and my vintage-holic mom. We both sat there, wiping away sweat and smiling at each other. I told him that my mom has way too much free time, and that I wished she would just find a man so she would stop nagging me all the time. Royce looked at me and said his situation was the opposite. His dad, Mr. Phillips, is always busy. He thought that if his dad had someone by his side, he might finally stop being such a workaholic and spend more time with the family. I turned to Royce as a light bulb went off in my head. I think he realized it at the exact same moment I did. We looked at each other and shouted at the same time, "How about we make them a couple?" Fast forward to today, and the plan is finally in motion. Our parents have such tight schedules that it took a lot of effort to coordinate this date. So far, everything is going perfectly. I told my mom she should check out this new vintage-themed restaurant in town, and Royce told his dad he wanted some father-son bonding time. Then, we accidentally bumped into each other there and acted all surprised. We ended up joining tables, and now all four of us are sitting together. I can't help but giggle watching my mom gracefully fixing her hair and acting her most charming self for Mr. Phillips. I winked at Royce, and we made a quick excuse to leave the table so the adults could have some real private time. Once we were outside, Royce and I didn't just leave. We crept over to the window to peek in and see how our little matchmaking plan was going. It had been a little while, so I figured they should be hitting it off by now. But goodness gracious. Both of us stared in total shock at the scene inside. Was Mr. Phillips actually slurping his spaghetti like that? He was leaning over his plate, making a huge mess, and I could see red sauce splashing everywhere. My mom looked absolutely mortified. She was sitting there, stiff as a board. We realized right then that we had to do something. So we rushed back inside to try and save the date before it turned into a total disaster. Just when I thought the worst was behind us, and we were heading for the exit, Phillips walked straight out the front door. He didn't even bother to hold it open for my mom. The heavy wooden door swung right back and nearly hit her in the face. I let out a long, disappointed sigh. My mom stood there looking stunned, and I felt so embarrassed for her. I guess every beginning is difficult, but this was starting to feel like a complete uphill battle. Over the next few days, Royce and I practically beat our brains out trying to think of a way to save their budding relationship. We decided we needed something dramatic to bring them together. So we came up with a plan that felt like a scene from a movie. I sent a text to my mom, pretending I had twisted my ankle during dance practice and needed her to pick me up right away. At the same time, Royce messaged his dad, Phillips, telling him he had forgotten his wallet in the practice room and asking him to grab it on his way home. We hid in the shadows of the hallway, our hearts racing, waiting for them to arrive. Once we saw both of them step inside the dance room, we quickly locked the door from the outside and even cut the lights for a bit of dramatic effect. I expected a romantic moment in the dark, and sure enough, I immediately heard my mom let out a horrified scream. Then the room went completely quiet. I nudged Royce and whispered that his dad must be calming her down. We waited a few minutes to let the romance sink in before calling the security guard to open the door. But when the lights came back on, the scene was the exact opposite of what I had imagined. It wasn't my mom who was scared. Phillips, he was the one being completely hysterical, literally sobbing in my mother's arm. My mom just stood there with a jaded, exhausted look on her face. I stared at them, thinking, wait, what is even happening right now? It turns out Royce had totally forgotten a tiny, crucial detail. His dad, who always sleeps with the lights on. He has a paralyzing fear of the dark. I turned and glared at Royce with fiery eyes while he just stood there awkwardly scratching his head. Plan B went straight into the trash. I felt completely defeated as I watched them leave. This was getting bad. Everything kept going south, and the clock was ticking because Mr. Phillips had to leave for another long business trip soon. I looked at Royce and asked him if there was absolutely anything his dad was actually good at. Royce shrugged and said he did not really know, other than the fact that his dad was pretty handy at fixing stuff. I could not help but let out a little giggle. I knew exactly what to do next. Phillips was a fixer. I was going to give him something to fix. The next day, I sat on the living room couch, waiting patiently while my mom was upstairs taking a shower. I counted down in my head. 3, 2, right on cue, I heard my mom scream for help. I ran toward the bathroom and saw water shooting out from a broken faucet like a geyser. My mom was standing there in her bathrobe, looking panicked as the floor started to turn into a swimming pool. After pretending to struggle with the leak for a few minutes, I grabbed the phone and called Mr. Phillips for help. As soon as he arrived, he did not hesitate. He went straight into the flooded bathroom and helped my mom out of the mess. I have to admit, he looked way too cool in that moment, almost like a real-life Superman. It was like he had this superhero aura around him that I had never noticed before. Now it was time for his real talent to shine. Just as I expected, he fixed the broken faucet in a blink. My mom was so impressed and grateful that she actually invited both him and Royce to stay for dinner as a thank you. I did a little victory dance in my head. Everything was finally going great. During dinner, the atmosphere was totally different from that disastrous spaghetti. Mr. Phillips could not stop praising my mom's cooking. He told her that the cozy feeling of the meal reminded him of the good old days. Seeing things finally move in the right direction, Royce and I finished our food as fast as we could. We made a quick excuse to leave the table, giving the two of them some much-needed alone time. We walked out into the backyard, surrounded by the green grass and the sweet smell of the flower bushes. Royce looked over at me and sighed, saying that he could not even remember the last time he had sat down with people like a real family. He started opening up to me, explaining that his parents had divorced a few years ago. Because of his dad's job, they were constantly moving from one city to another, which had really worn him out. Seeing that sad look in his eyes made me feel so bad for him. For a split second, I actually wanted to reach out and give him a huge hug, but then I caught myself and wondered what kind of nonsense I was thinking. I immediately brushed that weird feeling off, and we just stayed out there chatting until it got late. A few days later, I was at school talking to Royce like I usually do. Suddenly, our conversation was cut short by a familiar voice. It was Daisy. She rushed over and acted all shocked. asking Royce if he was the new guy everyone was talking about. Then she turned to me with a confused face asking how I even knew him. I was so annoyed. Where did she even come from? And why was it so strange that I was friends with him? Daisy leaned in and whispered to me that Royce's good looks had already caught the attention of half the school. It suddenly made sense why I kept feeling like people were staring at us whenever we hung out. Daisy did not stop there though. She kept chiming in and talking to Royce nonstop. She even followed us on our way home, even though her house is in the complete opposite direction. It was so incredibly annoying. Despite the annoyance of Daisy, things at home were actually looking up. My mom seemed to be floating on air. I caught her humming along to old love songs playing on her record player. And for the first time in forever, she didn't nag me at all when I headed out to dance practice. Royce told me his dad was in a great mood too. It felt like sparks were definitely flying between them. Royce was so pumped that our plan finally worked. He even called me sis and told me I did a good job. I felt a sudden jolt, like I had been startled by a loud noise. Huh? Was I really going to be his stepsister? I knew I should have been happy with that outcome, but I had this weird, uneasy feeling deep down that I couldn't explain. Then one day at practice, I walked in and saw Daisy with her arms wrapped around Royce's neck. I immediately felt so awkward that I just rolled myself into a corner, trying to be invisible. My heart felt heavy. Why did I react that way? Was it possible that I had actually fallen for him? I kept telling myself it couldn't be true, because we were about to be family. There was no way I could let that happen. After that day, I did my best to avoid Roy. Even though he had a new girl following him around, he still tried to talk to me. Once, he even left Daisy's side just to catch up with me as I walked by, but I kept my distance and rejected him. I turned away, feeling a wave of sadness wash over me. I was brooding about the whole mess on my way home, but then I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. As I entered the house, I heard my mom in the kitchen, talking on the phone in a very sweet voice. She told whoever was on the other end that she would bake them a pecan pie, and even called them darling. Wait a minute. I knew for a fact that Royce and his dad were both allergic to pecans. So who on earth was she being all lovey-dovey with? The next day, I told my mom I was going to practice like usual, but I actually lingered outside to spy on her. I looked through the window and saw her sitting on the couch, video calling some strange man I had never seen before. My heart sank. Oh gosh, did my mom really cheat on Royce's dad? How could she? Still in shock from what I saw at home, I glumly wandered over to Graffiti Alley. Then I spotted Royce and Daisy standing together. I quickly hid behind a wall, my heart hammering against my rib. They seemed to be in the middle of a really serious conversation. I heard Daisy ask him if he already knew the truth. Royce sighed and said he had known for ages, but he admitted that it was clear you cannot just force love on someone. Daisy sounded frustrated as she asked him if he really meant to just give up and happily watch them see other people. I had to cover my mouth in panic to keep from crying out. Did they already know my mom was being unfaithful to Mr. Phillips? How embarrassing! Just then, Daisy caught a glimpse of me. I just turned and frantically ran away as fast as my legs could carry me. The following day after school, Daisy cornered me near the emergency exit staircase. She said she wanted to talk in private, but it was not about what happened yesterday. She looked me dead in the eye and told me to do her a favor and stop hovering around Royce all the time. I told her that Royce was my friend and I could not just stop seeing him because she said so. If she liked him that much, she was welcome to him. Suddenly, without me even touching her, Daisy collapsed to the ground. She let out a dramatic ouch and cried out, asking why I had pushed her. I stood there, completely baffled. What on earth was she doing? At that exact moment, Royce appeared at the top of the stair. He looked worried and rushed over to check on her. Right then, I realized what her game was. She was trying to make me look like a villain. Fine, if she wanted a mean girl, I would give her one. I reached out as if to help her up and told her I was sorry. But just as she was about to stand, I gave her a real shove. She fell back onto the ground with a loud thud. I leaned down and whispered in her ear that now she finally knew what my real push felt like. I saw the stunned look on Royce's face, but I did not stay to explain. I just walked off, feeling a cold weight in my chest. I figured that now that I looked terrible in his eyes, he would finally stop approaching me. I came home with my face burning and tears streaming down my face. My mom was sitting in the living room. The second she saw me, she looked worried and asked me what was wrong. I just lost it. I yelled at her that it was all her fault, and that if she had not cheated on Mr. Phillips, everything would have been fine. My mom looked completely surprised. She asked me what on earth I was talking about, and who she was supposedly cheating on. When I finally calmed down enough to explain everything, she burst out laughing. It turns out they never even dated. They both saw through our matchmaking plan right from the start, but they decided just to be good friends. The man I saw her video calling was actually her new boyfriend. She just hadn't introduced him yet because they had only started seeing each other. Then she looked at me, her expression softening, and asked why I had tried to set them up in the first place. I finally had the chance to pour my heart out. I told her how I truly felt about being forced into her vintage world, and how much it hurt that I could not pursue my own love for street dancing. My mom went quiet for a long second. She looked at me sadly and said she realized how silly she had been. She inspired strangers to follow their dreams while stopping her own daughter from doing the same. We reached out and hugged each other tightly, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like she really saw me. I also told her about Royce's situation with his dad and how lonely he felt. She promised me she would talk to Mr. Phillips about it. Then a sudden thought hit me and I got really excited. I asked her to confirm that she and Miss Phillips were just friends, and she nodded, looking a bit surprised by my reaction. I immediately turned to run off and find Royce, but as if on cue, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and there stood Daisy. What game is she playing now? If she's here to mess around, come at me already. But surprisingly, Daisy apologized. She told me she was sorry and that she had just been blinded by jealousy. She explained that nothing was going on between her and Royce. In fact, he had already rejected her the day I saw them at Graffiti Alley. Before she left, she handed me a small present and said it was from him. My hands were shaking as I opened the box. Inside was an adorable keychain that said, "I love you." My heart skipped a beat. Was this actually a love confession? But then I saw a small note tucked inside. It said that he was leaving for another city and ended with, "Until we meet again." I stood there in total shock, whispering no, no, no to myself. I could not believe I was losing him just when I finally understood how I felt. I did not wait another second. I sprinted all the way to Royce's house. When I reached the door, it was already slightly open. I stepped inside and saw his suitcases lying wide open on the floor, surrounded by piles of clothes. My heart dropped. Oh Lord, he was already packing to leave. Without even thinking, I ran to him, threw my arms around him, and started sobbing. Royce looked completely stunned for a moment, but then he smiled at me so gently. He asked if I had read his message. I just nodded, blushing and still panting from the run. He looked into my eyes and asked what I thought about what he said. I stammered a bit, but I managed to tell him that I felt the same way. Then I asked him, through my tears, if he was really leaving me for good. That was when his smile turned totally playful. He admitted he was just messing with me about the moving part. It turns out he was going away, but only for a few days to go to a dance competition. I wiped away my tears and smiled, feeling so relieved. I told him that was awesome, but then I acted a little sulky and said I could not forgive him for tricking me like that just yet. So yeah. Even though we could not get our parents to fall in love, the two of us actually became a couple. I guess our matchmaking scheme was not a total failure after all. We were even able to change a few things for the better. My mom actually sat down and spoke to Miss Phillips, and he agreed not to move for the time being, so Royce could finally settle in at our school. Mom even promised to check on him whenever his dad has to go away on business. Things at my house have changed too. My mom finally started including modern elements in her vlogs, and I have even become a regular guest on her channel. In her latest video, she introduced her fiancé, and they were baking a coconut cake. She told her beans that Royce and I are hip-hop dancers, and even asked her fans to check out our channel if they fancy that sort of thing. She called us the cat's pajamas, and the four of us just sat there laughing happily together. Looking back at that messy journey, I realized that I had been so busy hiding behind my frustration that I forgot to actually let my mom in. I spent years fighting against her vintage world, not realizing that the walls between us were built from my own silence. I learned that you can't script someone else's heart or force two people to fit into a perfect picture, no matter how hard you try to play matchmaker. But when you finally stop performing and start being real, the people who love you will put down their own masks too. It turns out, we did not need a time machine to find common ground. We just needed the courage to be ourselves, right here in the present.